Taige. Thanks for joining us here. So it sounds like you've been busy with Redline Jiu Jitsu, your company that you've run for 2 decades now?
For 18 years, yeah. So almost 19 years. So yeah,
close enough. I round up.
Yeah, that's right.
Round up. So what's new with you lately?
Oh man, just I'm a workaholic, so just doing a lot of that stuff. I've got my own little association called Team Redline. We've got schools kind of in the United States and in Canada, and so yeah, just changing lives one choke at a time, I guess.
Fair. So your first one was here?
Yeah. So Redline headquarters is in Edmond, Oklahoma. We've been there since 2004, and I got my start in jiu-jitsu by, you wouldn't even hear that story probably.
I absolutely do.
So a long time ago, I was a band guy and I was following this band called Tool around. And so I won passes off of the radio to go backstage to a Tool concert. And back there, met Maynard and all that stuff, which was cool. But his bodyguard, there was this guy sitting next to him, this big yoked Asian guy sitting next to him. And I walked up to him, I was like, man, I can tell you do some sort of martial art. Because I'd done martial arts as a kid, but never Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'll never forget, he stood up next to Maynard, he crossed his arms and stuck his throat. I said, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I was like, oh shit, that's that stuff. Because Hoist had just, I think, came to, I think it was Tulsa, and it was UFC 4. He choked out Dan Severn. And I mean, everybody at that point was just like, what the hell is this, So I knew what jiu-jitsu was, and I had some VHS tapes of Hoist and stuff. And so I thought that was really cool. So I told Henry, that I was interested in it. I was a martial artist and whatever. And Henry was getting dropped off of the INEMA tour in Oklahoma because his family lived in Oklahoma. So Henry Akins was that bodyguard. And it was right around Christmas time. I think it was 1997 or 6. And so he was getting dropped off. He was like, hey, here's my number. Give me a call. Come over. We'll do some stuff. At the time, he was a blue belt, which is the first belt that you get in jiu-jitsu, under a legendary jiu-jitsu guy named Rickson Gracie. So I called him up, and he came over to my house and beat the crap out of me. And he was there for, I think, a couple of weeks and showed me my basics in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And we'd stayed good friends. And back then, jiu-jitsu wasn't prominent, wasn't everywhere yet. It was barely in California. And so that's where the Gracie Academy was. And that's where the UFC was really built around the Gracie Academy. Rorion Gracie established the Gracie Academy, then he started the UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship. And that's where Rickson Gracie was from. Rickson and Hoist and all those guys that you hear about. So, I stayed in touch with Henry over the years and kept training with him on and off, just whenever I could get out there and train with him in California, and then whenever he'd come to Oklahoma to see family and stuff like that. And then, fast forward till today, I'm the 13th American black belt from the Gracie Academy in Torrance, California, and I got my start with Henry because of the band Tool. So
that's wild.
Wild, right? Yeah, crazy stuff.
And I do remember his Maynard practices, right? Because I remember seeing some dude jump on stage and getting wrapped up pretty good, and I'm like, oh, that looks professional.
That was in Europe in 1996. I actually did a breakdown video of it on my YouTube channel, so go to Redline Jiu-Jitsu on YouTube, and there's a breakdown of him teaching you what he did on there.
That's awesome.
He's a good friend of mine. He runs an academy for me in Cottonwood, Arizona, called Verde Valley Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
You say you're the 13th American black belt?
Yeah, there was other Brazilians that came before me that kind of were there already at the Gracie Academy, but under Henry Hedon and Rorion Gracie, Horion's the guy that started the UFC. I'm the 13th guy that they black belted. So
okay, that's pretty impressive.
I worked my ass off for it. So
absolutely,
I like it, but I mean, in the real world, people are like, "What?" So it doesn't really, doesn't equate to much other than I really nerd out over it. So
well, absolutely, as you mentioned, and I didn't realize this, and you mentioned it, and it is true apparently because I never confirmed it either. That the UFC was basically there as a production or a promotional arm, for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu system,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Maeda is the Japanese jiu-jitsu guy that came over back in the 20s to Brazil, and he was doing something similar to that all over the world, and he's the guy that taught the Gracies. The Gracies helped him in a Japanese colonization get established in Brazil, and in return, he taught the Gracie brothers back then. So, and then they in turn created Gracie Jiu-Jitsu out of that Japanese style of Jiu-Jitsu. And so it's a little less rules and more submission-based, where typically like judo, especially now it's Olympic judo, is more about throwing your opponent on the ground and stuff like that. And Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is more about real-life fighting, you know. So that's why they created the UFC, was to show that Jiu-Jitsu was the most dominant art out of all the arts. Back then, you didn't cross-train. There was really no such thing as cross-training other than what Bruce Lee had kind of done, which he pioneered, you know, other martial arts, mixing it together. But back then it was like all martial arts were against each other, and so they put them all to the test and to see who came to the top. And back then it wasn't like you had a fight versus one guy and another guy. It was a tournament. So one guy had to fight like everybody there, and whoever won at the end was the winner. And so that ended up being Royce Gracie for the first few UFCs. And they established that Jiu-Jitsu is the most efficient self-defense and fighting art on the planet. And nowadays in the UFC, the only thing you can't go, you know, or you can go without learning would be Jiu-Jitsu. You can have any kind of striking style, any kind of takedown style, but you have to have some form of Jiu-Jitsu, at least to nullify Jiu-Jitsu. So it's still even relevant today.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I started watching UFC somewhere in the middle then ran backwards. I watched, you know, the VHS that you did, and it had been watched so many times, the tracking's out and whatever. But you watch the first few, and they're just absolutely gonzo. You had one giant that's like 7 foot, and then he's fighting some tiny guy. I want to say one guy had like one boxing glove on one hand.
That's right.
And I'm like, what is this? And then at the end of it, I'm like, okay, well, Gracie, want to, you know, flash forward. I already know what I know now, so I'm start thinking about it. And I was talking to, may have been Clark here about it, and he was like, oh no, it was created as for them to show that it was the superior
100%.
fighting style on the planet, and they'd literally take anyone else off. But now you've got months between fights for those guys. And that day it was like, how do you even do all this in one day?
Yeah, well, the version that it was before, like I said, it was a tournament, and it doesn't matter what weight you are, you didn't have to wear gloves, you didn't have to wear a mouthpiece or anything. It's just you couldn't like gouge people in the eyes, you couldn't bite. I think that was it. And you could punch each other in the junk. I mean, it was crazy, you know. So, but because it was so brutal, it got a lot of pushback. And the reason it was in Oklahoma is because there just wasn't many regulations here. So it ended up being in places where there just wasn't very much like regulation. And then it got deemed a blood sport and pulled off a pay-per-view. Once it got pulled off pay-per-view, it was like, you know, canary in the coal mine type of thing. So Horion ended up selling that to Dana White, Vasista Brothers, however you say their names. And they took it and turned it into what it is today. And they took the boxing commission, put rules to it, put weight categories to it, time limits to it, all that kind of stuff. So now it's not a tournament anymore, obviously. It's two guys, similar skill sets, same weight, fighting with a time limit. And there's other things like, you know, there's no action, you know, on the ground. Sometimes we'll stand people up. And so a lot of people in jiu-jitsu will talk about like, oh, it's not real jiu-jitsu, this, that, and the other. But I'm just a silver lining kind of guy. So if we didn't have that, I think jiu-jitsu would have not done as well. So the UFC as it is, even though it's got all these rules and whatever, it still made jiu-jitsu as prominent as it is today. And so a lot of us, like me, have a living based off of that, so I'm not upset about it at all.
Absolutely. And like you said, you have to integrate this in your fighting style. You're toast.
That's right.
In the octagon. So in a way, it still is a promotional arm for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Correct.
So obviously you had your interest in it, and now we've seen the, I don't know, for lack of a better word, superiority of the fighting system. How has this changed over the last 20 years? Obviously, UFC's gotten a lot more popular. People are involved in that. What impact has that had on people who are interested in what you do in your school of fighting?
Well, you know, jiu-jitsu has become obviously more popular because of the UFC and stuff. And jiu-jitsu itself has evolved. It's not the same art that it was when it first came over here, for sure. And the cool thing is like it's relatively young. So most martial arts are around like 1,000 years old, or maybe even older. And Brazilian jiu-jitsu is really only around 100 years old. And so it's still evolving at a neck break pace because of really different rule sets that are out there. So we have kind of some different versions of jiu-jitsu. You've got one with the gi. The gi is like a kimono or looks like a bathrobe that you're wearing. And so in our pajamas. And then you got one where it's no-gi, which is where everybody's in spandex. They call it spats, but it's just, yoga pants for men. and then they have kind of another version that is like it's called combat jiu-jitsu, where you can slap each other really hard once you hit the ground. And then, of course, there's the UFC and the different kinds of bare knuckle fights and stuff like that are out there. So all these different rule sets grow jiu-jitsu in different ways because there's different things that win the game, basically, right? And then there's jiu-jitsu tournaments that have points, and then there's some that are submission only. So the ones that have points, people are very particular about what positions they get, how long they hold them, because they need the points. And then let's say just a submission only type event, people don't care if you get in a bad position, because if you get out of it, you can still get to a submission. So it's all just submission based. So this is growing the art at a much faster pace, exponentially, really. And the thing, and I hear people talk about this all the time, oh, well, I can't wait till we can get Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the Olympics. Shut up. The thing that killed judo was the Olympics. Judo used to have all these cool moves in it. It used to be jiu-jitsu. And because of the Olympics, they keep whittling away more and more things that you can do. And so the reason jiu-jitsu is growing at a neck break pace right now is because there are so many different flavors of tournaments that you can enter and different things that are going on. Now, the UFC's also made popular this no-gi style of jiu-jitsu. It's a little easier to watch for the normal person, because when somebody's wearing the uniform, there's different grips and stuff. It's very hard to digest what exactly is going on. And there's a lot of things that kind of look, I don't know, like stalling or whatever, that are actually them barely progressing. But to the naked eye, it's hard to see. However, when you see somebody in a no-gi format where they're just wearing like a rash guard and spats and all this stuff, it's more digestible to the UFC fan who's already seeing people do that kind of grappling with punches involved. And so I think it's just easier for the average person to digest and be able to understand. And so it's growing at a really huge pace. Over the last few years, it's just become a huge sport. Gordon Ryan is one of the top of the tier right now in no-gi, and probably paid the most of any grappler ever out there. And it's the first time in grappling history where people are able to make a living like that, like a good living. Like, it's not like what a basketball player would make or a football player yet, but it's going to get there. And I think that's exciting. And so now it's like, as opposed to just being a hobby, it can actually be like, your profession. And so this is the first time in human history that grappling's ever been like that.
And that's what I was about to say. It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, jiu-jitsu is mainly grappling. Is there any striking in it, or minor?
Yeah, so Gracie Jiu-Jitsu does have striking in it. It's more concerned about nullifying strikes. So it's about me getting close enough to you that I can suck up all the space and you can't hit me with enough power to knock me out. The reason in boxing why they tear people apart when they get too close is called a clinch, and they try to pull them apart because you can't really get a good shot in on somebody that's that close to you. Well, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is that. We're trying to get that close to you so you can't hit us hard enough, so eventually you fall down. Now, that might be us making you fall down. That might be you falling down on your own. But eventually the fight's going to hit the ground. When that does, that's where we live. And so, and if you take somebody who has no idea about jiu-jitsu and you put them against somebody who's been training, let's say 2 days a week for 2 years, it is like an adult fighting a baby. It's just not fair, And so, and I've done a bunch of martial arts, and it takes a long time to be proficient in most martial arts, especially striking, especially with somebody bigger than you. But with jiu-jitsu, especially Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, if you can close the distance on somebody bigger than you, suck up the space, and get the fight to the ground, it's pretty much whatever you want to do. And so, and you can choose to strike from there, or you could choose not to, or you could, so it's really the most humane martial art. I did Muay Thai for a long time too. And Muay Thai, the option is just to knock you out.
Yeah.
It's kind of rough on your brain. But Jiu-Jitsu, we have the option of just either controlling you, having a come to Jesus meeting, or, putting you to sleep, or breaking all your arms and legs off. So we can take it to whatever level. If you hold a choke long enough, people will die. So, it could be the most extreme, And it's unfortunate today because the layman who writes our laws and stuff like that, the politician, sees like choking somebody as being violent and dangerous and whatever. But I believe it's the most humane thing you can do to somebody who's trying to be violent, because it's really not dangerous to them and it's not dangerous to you once they're asleep.
Right.
And then you can kind of, wake them up however you want and have a come to Jesus meeting after that. So, but I think the narrative is starting to change around it. And again, that's because the UFC has made jiu-jitsu popular. So there's more and more information out there about it. So hopefully we can get some of the laws changed for like first responders and police officers, things like that, because they're already limited with what they can do. In New York right now, you can't even like hold somebody down with your body weight. So now you've got 4 guys holding the perpetrator by all limbs, and then they got one other guy jumping in there just rocking him, and that's legal, but choking him out's not. Seems a little backwards to me.
Absolutely, and definitely the optics of that. It looks terrible.
Doesn't
it looks
look
like
great.
People ganging up and beating someone. But it's like you said, choking people out. Honestly, watching kind of UFC in the middle, you always thought that was more dangerous, but if you do it, like you say, in a humane sense, it ends the fight. And as you said, stick around, have a come to Jesus meeting. My thought is if I was in that kind of encounter and it wasn't a friend or something like that, it gives you time to get the hell out.
Sure does. Yeah, and I think that one misconception is people see these people that get choked and they die.
Right.
These people probably would have died anyway, and it's because of the drugs they were on. A lot of these people are on methamphetamines or whatever else, and they're having heart attacks. They're not dying because of blood loss to the brain. They're dying from a heart attack. And it's unfortunate. There are some abuses of power out there. Of course, there's going to be abuse of power in any place that you look. But I think that once we get just a better handle on what is actually going on, then people can have a better way to kind of adjust their department's rules and regulations and stuff like that.
I wrote a story, it must have been 10 or so years ago. This is part of what made me interested in mixed martial arts, was talking to a bunch of Oklahoma City police officers who were involved in these things. For example, Matt Grice back then was fighting.
Yeah.
And Brian Piccolo was on the force. I don't know if he still is.
Motorcycle cop. He's a bad dude, man.
Exactly. And I went out to his place out there, and where was it? Mustang, maybe? Yeah. And what I heard from all of them is having this discipline makes things a lot less violent on the street, because they know what to do, how to counter it. They know what hurts and will make you stop, but they don't have to do any lasting damage and things like that. So they can get in, neutralize the situation, and get away.
You bet.
Which, to a layman, or even to me, like I kind of came into it with this preconception maybe that like, oh shit, if you've got cops out there that are like trained fighters, then it's like, I don't know, a side-scrolling video game from the 90s where they're just out there knocking people out and moving down the road. So, but it seems to balance that. And something that I've noticed, and you hear this from everyone, a lot of people with maybe self-diagnosed, or at least they're self-aware of behavioral issues that they have, get into a discipline like this, and it helps them correct it in such a way. So my question to you is, in the 2+ decades that you've been doing this, obviously you're going to grow in age and things in life are going to change. But what are the changes that you have seen in yourself as a direct result of practicing the same discipline for so long?
Well, I will say this, and I hear people say this a lot, like, jiu-jitsu's made me a better person, blah, blah, blah. And this might be true. If it is true, it's because of who taught you, right? So jiu-jitsu doesn't make you a better person, unfortunately. What it does is it amplifies your personality. So if I'm an asshole and I learn jiu-jitsu, I'm a super asshole, right? It's just like a superpower. A superpower doesn't make you a Superman, right? You could be a super villain too. And so I'm very cautious when I talk about, jiu-jitsu changes your life and makes you a better person. If you're in the right environment, it does. And that's one thing we're, in my academy, my association, we pride ourselves on, is making sure we have something called character development that we're very, very particular on. You can't go very far and be a dick in our group. You'll have to go someplace else. There's plenty of other places to go. We'll send you someplace else. But with that being said, jiu-jitsu does change your life in a way. Like for police officers, for example, it gives you a sense of knowing that you can handle yourself, where if you're scared and you have a gun and somebody you feel like is threatening your life, you don't have many options, right? So same thing for the general person. Most men, it's been this way for millions of years, but we walk around and look for who's the biggest in the room. We're like, ooh, don't want to piss that guy off because he might kick my ass, So I see this with kids the most that come in that are maybe been bullied or something had happened traumatic in their life. Jiu-jitsu gives them the ability to have self-confidence in a way that allows them to think about other stuff. Because you got to think about it. In the beginning of your career as a child, you worry about, especially as a young man coming up, you start worrying about the other bigger kids, the bullies, whatever else, and it occupies a lot of your brain space. Mm-hmm. So if you can have that issue completely taken care of, like if I've got a kid that's been training with me for a couple of years, he's absolutely not worried about a bully, right? And so then what? I had one kid that came to me that was, his dad put him in class, he was being bullied, whatever else, and they were like, man, I don't, he doesn't talk very much, whatever, and he was a big kid, scared to death. And so I trained with him private lessons, got him in class, all this stuff, and his dad wanted him to go play football at OU. I remember he came to me one time in a private lesson. He goes, Coach, I'd really like to go to Harvard, but I'm afraid of what my dad's going to say. I'm like, he's probably not going to say anything negative about it. If you could apply to Harvard, you should try it. Well, he teaches at Harvard now.
Oh, wow. And
he came back to me, and his dad actually came back and brought the rest of the family and the kids and stuff. And he was like, man, I just wanted to tell you, this kid was named Luke. He goes, I asked Luke what was the secret, because I'm not smart enough to go to Harvard. And he goes, well, Dad, you taught me how to never give up, and Mom taught me how to read at an early age, and Ty taught me problem solving under pressure. And so he's like, all right, well, all the kids are going to come.
Yeah.
So giving kids those tools in the beginning, I think is just super, super important. And we don't realize as adults, we have all these other things. We stop worrying less and less about the guy who's going to beat us up at wherever. But kids, it's a real threat. Even as adults, we will think about this stuff. Now, I've been so far removed from worrying about if somebody's going to whip my ass or not for so long that I'm probably not a good representative of what people feel like today. But I would imagine if you see some big yoked dude in the room and he's mad about something, you're trying to kind of walk on eggshells a little bit to not piss him off. And when you're somebody that's trained for a long time, you just don't. The other thing is my level of aggression is super low because I don't have to be as angry. I don't have to pump my chest and do stuff like that. So if somebody flips me off on the highway, I wave and smile. That's probably not the best thing to do, but I don't try to get into those same kind of altercations because I know humans are an emotional animal that's mostly reactive. Mm-hmm. And jiu-jitsu is manipulating that. We're manipulating human nature and how you react. If I know you're going to step there, if I push you, then I move your foot before you can step there so you fall. So knowing those kinds of things, I think, has bettered my life. But I've had really good teachers that have always set the example and are just good people, in general. And so I strive to try to be like that. And then I also strive to try to get back to my community because jiu-jitsu has given me so many things, not just self-defense and ability to fight and all that stuff, but given me so many opportunities, experiences, things like that. There's no way I'll be able to give back what I've gotten from jiu-jitsu in this lifetime. So I feel obligated to try to give back to kids, to women, to, those kinds of things. So yeah, jiu-jitsu has definitely changed my life, made me who I am today, and all of my opportunities are directly linked to jiu-jitsu in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, it's not a bad life.
Absolutely. Now, when you say give back, what do you mean precisely by that?
Well, so we have a huge kids program. I have an association with schools that have kids programs, women's programs. Our motto is we empower the weak against the strong, the child against the bully, and the woman against the violent man. We are the Redline. And so we're giving people the powers and tools necessary to be able to really make a life or death difference. I've had many testimonies from every walk of life, from police officer to kid to woman to all sorts of things. That was like a life or death situation that they're alive now because of what they know. And so that's pretty gratifying. And so we try to do that just as much as we possibly can, put that information out there as much as we possibly can to literally save lives, So yeah, that's how we're trying to give back.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned a lot about young people. You know, of course, I'm 40, so I grew up with the Karate Kid, of course.
Yeah,
but
me too.
from the other side, do you see a lot of older folks wanting to get into it, or are they afraid of it because, I don't know, injuries stick once you get to a certain point?
The good thing about jiu-jitsu is you can train it at full speed without really getting hurt that much. Now, we're not playing checkers,
right?
You know, we are grappling, but I have a whole group of guys in their 60s at my academy. My oldest one, I've got two that are 68. Right, one of them is a purple belt, and he is a bad man. I mean, the kids come in, you know, that are like little wrestler kids or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, he's this old man," and he will beat the brakes off of you if that's what you need, you know.
Yeah.
So it's one of the few things that you can train into the later years of your life. You couldn't do Muay Thai like that. You couldn't do boxing like that because of your joints. There's just certain things you just can't do. You don't want the head trauma from striking for that long, you know,
right.
CTE stuff. And so, but jiu-jitsu, you can train it all the way up until, you know, almost the very end of your life. Elio Gracie, the founder of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, trained all the way until almost his death. And jiu-jitsu is not what killed him. He slipped in the shower and broke his hip.
Wow.
So
how anticlimactic.
Yeah, I know. But, you know, if done right, you can train it forever.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of what we're doing. Now, not a lot of places. Today's day and age, because of the UFC and because of how there's a lot of ego-driven stuff going on with certain schools, it makes it a little bit harder for older people to get into certain places. We call them meat grinder schools. And the reason I know about this is because I used to be one. My school is called Redline, not because there's a red line on the mat. It was because we were peaking the tachometer on a car. We were going as hard and as fast as we possibly could. I remember when I first started, I had another job, so I didn't really need the money from it. And the windows were blacked out, and there was no sign. If you found out where I was at and you got there before we started class, I'd let you in. If not, you just stood outside. If you came inside, I had a bucket that had a sticker, a Redline sticker on it, and I gave you that bucket. And my job was to make you throw up in it. So, although it makes tough people, it doesn't really keep a big clientele.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but there's a lot of people that still go off that method, and there's nothing wrong with it. It does create really hardened individuals that are really tough, and that's great. But the method that we adhere to, really I got from the Gracie Academy, and it's just to make jiu-jitsu accessible to everybody. The people that need it the most aren't going to be those juggernauts that can just grind it out and stay through it. They can eventually, but you got to get them in the door and give them the tools necessary to be able to be that. And so that's kind of what I think separates our association from some of the others that are out there.
Absolutely. And just using terms that we've been using, like, and within policing, like academies and such. Mm-hmm. In order to even get to the academy, you have to pass certain physicals and things like that. Would you recommend there's a certain benchmark or criteria that people get into in terms of physical fitness before joining?
That is a great question. And I have so many people that I talk to and like, oh man, I'm just trying to go get in shape before I come in, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's the unfortunate news. There is no way to get in shape for it other than being there. There is nothing else that will simulate what we're doing like doing it. The good news is we have a basic fundamentals class that walks you through everything on a very baby level. So there's no sparring, none of that kind of stuff. You're just doing the moves with a cooperating partner, right? And we're showing you the moves. You have a card that talks about the moves. We have videos that you get to watch online that you get access to if you're part of our association. It allows you to see it in real time. You can watch the videos after you're done or before you go. And it gives you a really cookie cutter way of learning step by step the basic movements that you need to know. And then after you've done that for a while, then we let you come into our advanced classes. And advanced classes are a little bit tougher and rougher and faster and that kind of stuff. But that beginning phase of using that basics curriculum to get them through the door is paramount to being able to give the people that need it the most the tools necessary to get to the advanced classes. We typically have to have them stay there for 40 classes before they get into the advanced classes. And once they've done that, they have a general idea, at least of what's happening to them when they get into the advanced classes. If not, the risk of injury goes up. Also, like, people don't like to lose at stuff. If you played a video game that you never passed the first level of for a week, would you keep playing it?
Been there, done that.
Yeah,
Hell no.
no.
Delete it, return it,
That's right.
Whatever.
So we make that a little bit more palatable, easier to get the person in there. And again, it's because the people that need it the most aren't going to immediately just take to it and be athletes. And so that's kind of our mission.
Fair. Now you say 40 classes. How long would that take to get from beginner to intermediate or advanced?
Really depends on the individual. We have unlimited classes, so you can come as many times as you want. We have a 6 a.m., an 11:30, and a 6 p.m. class that you could be taking. So you could literally do 3 classes in one day. So it's really up to the individual how fast they progress. Some people come 2 days a week. That's kind of like a standard thing for the average working dad. But we have other people that we call mat rats, and they're there every time the doors open. So it's just really up to the individual. And sometimes people will come like 2 days a week in the beginning, start getting really obsessed with it, and all of a sudden then they're in every class. Or maybe they come to a bunch of classes, they have to dial it down because they just feel too sore, you know? So it allows you to really pick and choose how fast you move. We give the same information to everybody. It's up to the individual of how fast they progress.
Absolutely. So 2 a week, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
So extrapolate that down, you know, you're basically building yourself. And I'm the same way, where I'll get into something really hard, make it to a certain point, and then I'll burn myself out, and so I'll disappear and not do it again. So is there any sort of discipline as far as, if you were going to do it, you don't want to start and stop? Or is it the kind of thing where you can start and you'll lose a little of your progress, but you can move forward? Or is it one of these things that you really can only be effective at if you consistently and constantly practice it?
It's a good question. So the guitar, for example, when you're learning the guitar, playing the guitar, it's using fine, gross motor movements of your fingers, right? If you play that and you're doing great and playing 2 days a week and whatever, you're gonna get pretty good. And then if you quit for 6 months and go back, it's like really bad. Well, jiu-jitsu is large gross motor movements. That's like riding a bicycle. So once you've learned to ride the bicycle, you can pretty much ride the bicycle, right? So that's the good news. So you could quit for a period of time and it's not gonna really go away that much. It does like get what we call rusty.
Yeah.
So if you're out for, 6 months or so, it's gonna get a little bit rusty, but it comes back like that.
Yeah.
And so you could take time off. We typically suggest that you don't take time off, and it's not because of anything other than we're creating a lifestyle, right? So it's not just like a martial art practice or whatever. It's a lifestyle, and the people that are there are holding us accountable for things, and we're always trying to better each other and that kind of stuff. So the community itself is really what I think keeps people there. People come in for self-defense, but after the first year, you can defend yourself against just about anybody that's not like a trained fighter, right?
Yeah.
So people don't stay for self-defense. They stay for something else, the camaraderie, the health benefits. I'm the worst self-motivator for lifting weights. I just cannot do it. But I can go in and lift people like 3 times a day, and not even notice it.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, people come in for that, and they stay for many of the other things. The benefits of jiu-jitsu far outweigh joint locks and chokes. Although those are fun, but there's so many other benefits to it. And I think that's what people start to see after they've been in it for a while. And that's why we have such a good retention rate.
Okay. Well, like you said, you started as a meat grinder school. What made you evolve out of that?
Yeah, well, so I started kind of for selfish reasons. I was just wanting to compete, and I just needed bodies in the room that I could throw around. And so I did that for a while. And what happened was I started to see people whose lives were being changed, who maybe had bad discipline problems or alcohol problems or drug problems or problems with people, whatever. And because of the discipline of jiu-jitsu and doing something repetitively over and over again that makes you physically stronger, mentally and physically and all that stuff, I started to see that I was changing lives indirectly and not even meaning to. And then I realized that I kind of had a responsibility at that point. And I was like, okay, you got to either go in or not on this thing. And I was in music for a long time too, and I think it's reflected in my music too. I was always trying to steer people in a positive direction. Things are not always positive. Life is based off suffering, but we can find moments of glory or happiness or whatever. Like I said, I'm a positive or a silver lining kind of guy, I guess. But I think that once I started to see that I was changing people's lives on a fundamental level, I was like, man, this makes me feel good. It's for selfish reasons still. It's like, it just makes me feel good to see people do better in their life.
For sure.
So
for sure.
Still selfish, just a different version.
And that, no, sure, absolutely. That incremental success that you mentioned, and doing that, that's tied to your belt system. How long, I mean, obviously you came at it with an unrivaled intensity, but how long would it take what you would call your average student to progress through the belt system, and how long within Gracie Jiu-Jitsu would it take to actually, maybe not original Gracie Academy, but black belt in the
So it's a good question. On average, it takes a person anywhere from 1 to 3 years to make it to the first belt. We just actually started an interim belt of green belt, which kind of represents just knowing all the self-defense stuff. And at green belt, you kind of sit and wait till you get to blue belt. The belt system typically in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu goes white, blue, purple, brown, black. But now a bunch of different academies, not just me, have added an interim belt. And it's just because, man, Jiu-Jitsu is hard and it takes so long to get through anything. So the first mile marker at my school is a green belt. Green belt just means that you're efficient enough at Jiu-Jitsu that you're not going to get just beat up in a real street fight against somebody else. It doesn't mean you're going to beat everybody up, but it means you're not going to get beat up, which is a pretty good milestone. Then after that, it's trying to get to blue belt. Blue belt means that you're there to play the game against others who are trained, and you're still going to do relatively well. And to get to blue belt, like I said, it takes anywhere from 1 to 3 years to get to that blue belt. To get to the next belt, purple belt, it's a little bit more time. You probably set at blue belt for anywhere from, it depends on the person, it really does. But you could set at blue belt for 3 years, you could sit there for 6 years. You know, it kind of depends on the person, how much you're coming. Really, black belt, the goal, like we could say, the goal is to make it a black belt where you're efficient at all the things. To get to black belt typically takes people on average 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
So it's a lifelong endeavor for sure. There's people that have done it faster, but they're also doing like 3 times a day.
Right.
Every day.
Right.
You know? And so I think people don't see that. There's Gordon Ryan made it, I think, in 5 years or something to black belt, but he was literally sleeping on the mats.
Yeah.
He was there at every single class. And, you know, so it's just time. You know?
How do you know when people have tripped or triggered this belt system and move on to the next one?
We have criteria for most of it. So like for the green belt, for example, you have to know a certain set of moves. And then after that, you're building your game. So the 3 things that we base it off of after you make it to, say, to blue belt. So green belt is what we get you to, and then you have to stay for at least 50 hours, and you'd have to do so many basic classes still, so many advanced classes, open mats, and then you're assessed by all the coaching team. And what we're looking for are really 3 things. 1, proficiency of technique, obviously. And the other one is just mat time, like how much mat time you've been there. Instructor evaluation, and instructor evaluation also has character development in it. So we're looking at your character, like what are we creating here? Are we creating a supervillain or a superhero, right? So it's part of the gig. So the instructor evaluation is part of that. And we're evaluating how you're chaining things together, that kind of stuff. You think about it like this. When you are a blue belt, you know the alphabet. When you are a purple belt, you know words.
Right.
When you're a brown belt, you can create sentences, maybe paragraphs. And when you're a black belt, you're making a book.
Okay. All right. What is the final I like that analogy. That's really good. That kind of, yeah. What is the final test from brown to black?
Well, so you're building your own game. So everybody's intention is like you've heard in yoga, like set your intention for yoga. Well, it's the same thing for jiu-jitsu. So people have an intention for their jiu-jitsu. So law enforcement officers, for example, they will set their intention to be very much on top of the fight. They don't really want to go to the ground. If they do, then they're going there for cuffing procedures, things like that. So they're very much on top. You get somebody that's doing it for the submission only, like we were talking about earlier. They don't care about somebody getting them in a bad position or whatever else. They're just trying to sub people. You get somebody that's doing just the no-gi, where it's just in their spandex or whatever, then they're worried specifically about submissions that work on people that are like that. You get people that are in the gi, their intention is for doing gi chokes and gi moves that hold the person down with the uniform, right? So the intention sets a lot of that stuff. So black belt is having your game built in a specific way to achieve your goal. And the goal at the end of the day is being able to, make the other person say uncle, basically, right? And so I think about it like making roads or highways. In the beginning of your career, say at blue belt, you have one highway that leads you to a set of moves that you can make somebody say uncle on, right? And then there's other little roads around it that are probably dirt roads that lead you to the highway. Well, eventually you'll start to pave these little roads and they'll make bigger roads, not highways, but other roads that are paved and more dirt roads. And then you'll create another highway that's to another submission chain of events or ways to make people say uncle. And then pretty soon by black belt, you have like what Dallas looks like, where there's all these different intertwining, roads and stuff. And it's pretty complex, but there's no specific way you have to design your road system. You can design it any way that you want. It's just about, are you efficient at being able to get to your goal? We do have 4 pillars. We call it the 4 pillars of success. And you have to, as a black belt, you have to have these completely nailed down. There's no way you could get really past purple belt without having them. But the first pillar of success is survival. I have to survive or nothing else really matters.
Right.
The second pillar of success is escaping. Escaping bad positions and escaping submissions when they make me say uncle. The third pillar of success is control. Controlling my opponent, controlling the submission before I submit you, controlling myself. And the fourth and final pillar of success is submission, when I make you say uncle, right? And so I have to have all 4 of those things in line to be able to make jiu-jitsu work at a high level, at an efficient level. You can also look at like character development the same way, or life. The first pillar of success of life is survival.
Sure.
Right? I gotta be able to eat and drink water and have shelter. The next pillar of success would be escape. What is that? Escaping bad situations, how I handle adversity. The third pillar of success, which is control, is being able to control my positioning in life, like where I'm at, where my objectives are, being able to control myself, my emotions, things like that. And the fourth pillar of success in life is being able to execute my main goals. Like, what is my goal as a whatever, as a dad or as a doctor or as a whatever, And so at black belt, all 4 of those pillars of success are completely nailed down and very, very visible to us, And so it's something you kind of have to be in the game a little bit to see, but once you're in it, it becomes super obvious who has it and who doesn't.
Absolutely. So a second ago, you mentioned all life is suffering, which is a Buddhist sentiment, right?
Yeah, I was a practicing lay Buddhist for a while. I still hold some of those ideas. I don't really subscribe to anything specific now. I guess, the older I get, you just take pieces from things and whatever works you keep. Really, jiu-jitsu is the same thing. Just take the stuff that works and throw everything else away.
Sure. So is there a philosophical underpinning to jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I think that's all individual interpretation. So it just depends on the person that you talk to. So everybody's environment and experience will probably dictate their vibe of that kind of stuff. For me, it's martial arts has always been really important to me. I started when I was like 9 doing like karate and then taekwondo and hapkido. My first 2 black belts, this is going to date me. My first 2 black belts were in taekwondo and hapkido in 1989.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I've been doing that for a long time. And you just had mentioned the Karate Kid. That's the thing that really got me going as a kid. I really wanted, that aspect of it, And so that's what led me to do this life. I was also a severe dyslexic, so I wasn't very good at anything else. I was good at music a little bit and then martial arts. But yeah, I like to think about life. Again, I'm a silver lining kind of guy, but life is based off suffering. If you know that, then you don't get really disappointed when everything's not, roses and kittens.
Right.
And there's going to be times that things suck. And so if you know that life is based on suffering, like, oh, this is just the suck part, eventually the good part will come back around. So it seems to have worked for me at this point. So I guess that's the algorithm I'm running at this point in my brain.
Fair. And we talked plenty about BJJ. So, but you mentioned music a number of times. So let's talk about kind of your musical background and how these things have kind of blended in your life. Where did you start playing music? And I especially love early band names, like bands that have come and gone.
Sure.
So what were the names of your bands? What did you play? And when are you still playing music, or have you kind of put it on a back burner so obviously this jiu-jitsu thing takes a lot of bandwidth.
It does, yeah. But again, like I said, I don't really do too many things other than jiu-jitsu. So you kind of have to have a balance, or at least I do. And I think music kind of balances me out. So I have like a really physical aspect to me. And I think music is more cerebral. I can't say words either, apparently. But it gives me that balance that I really need. So yeah, I still do music. I started doing music when I was pretty young. I started playing the drums, I think at the age of 12, something like that. And was a drummer for a long time and played in a bunch of local bands in Oklahoma City when I was growing up and stuff. Yeah, and so one time our singer left and I was in this band and I knew some like really good drummers because I was a drummer and I knew all the drummers in town. And I was singing backing stuff at the time. And so they were like, well, why don't we just get one of your drummer friends to play the drums and you could be the singer? But I really love playing the drums, you know? So I was like, oh, I don't know. And so anyway, I did that. It was with a band called Cellophane. And we eventually got a cease and desist because there was another band called Cellophane, apparently. And then we changed our name to Lure. And so I was in a band called Lure for a long time in the 90s. And we toured around. We played a Battle of the Bands for Rolling Stone magazine. It was like 6,000 bands. We got second, which means nothing.
You know, I didn't realize you were in that band because I had a friend who, back in the day when it was going on, was obsessed with that.
Oh, yeah.
We had to put two and two together.
We had a weird cult following back then. We were experimental, I guess. So I would be like painted and doing weird stuff and breathe fire and just whatever, you know. We sometimes had, I don't know, we did some weird stuff. But it was fun. I don't take any of it back. So it was a good time. And like I said, we toured around the U.S. with that band just on a very small level. Nothing, we never got signed. We had a deal with Sony that we almost got, and then we blew that off thinking more deals would come through the pipe, and they did not. And so yeah, but played some cool shows, and we had a really cool like underground following of people that would show up at every show we played, no matter where we were at. They would like travel to be with us and stuff. So that was cool. Yeah. So, and it was in that era right before the internet really started doing stuff. So it was harder to see bands and stuff then, you know. So that was really cool. And then that band kind of fell apart. I started doing jiu-jitsu while I was in that band. And then I ended up getting in a band called Everybody Panic. That band did a little bit better. We were signed to like a little indie label called Cavi Gold Records, and we toured all over the U.S. a bunch. We toured a bunch. And we played with some cool bands. One of our first shows was with Deftones, and that's where we got signed. And then, I mean, we've played with just really some cool shows. I think one of my favorite ones was Korn, and they played their whole first record, the whole entirety. So that was really cool. I've played with Perfect Circle. I can't even remember. There's just a ton of great bands. And a lot of cool touring experiences on that deal. It was the first like real tour that I'd ever been on, was with them, where we were just out for months at a time, you know? With Lure, we would go out and we would play like a few shows, maybe a couple weeks, and then come back, you know, do our pizza job or whatever. Yeah. And then, but that was the first time I ever like left and went out. And luckily, my school was already kind of established and put together, and it was able to kind of run itself. Shout out to Chasen Hill, who was always there running my school when I was gone. He's one of my first black belts. But so yeah, that's then I was in that band for a while. We had a couple of records out. We had one that was getting ready to come out before kind of pandemic happened and all that stuff. And then everybody kind of went different ways. The guitar player got into the cannabis industry here. I kind of did too for a little bit and then got out of it. But at this point in my life, touring like that, I mean, it's hard. It's hard doing that kind of stuff. And I mean, I have some different opportunities now. And so I've got kind of an acoustic thing going on right now. I've got me and my current girlfriend right now, she's an amazing singer. She got a full ride to UCO for opera, but she can sound just like anybody. And so I play the guitar, we sing some tunes together, and this super mellow, but it's cool. And I love harmonies and stuff. So being able to do that kind of stuff is really cool. So I do that. And then I've got some other projects where it's just recording projects. I've got some friends really all over the U.S. that send me different things that they've done, and then I'll sing over it. Nowadays, you can record in your house, you know? So I got Logic set up at my house, and I go through there, and it's fun. And again, it gives me that balance between the physicality of jiu-jitsu and then being able to do music. So I'll probably always do that.
Absolutely. And then there's this thread running through. You mentioned playing with a Perfect Circle. You mentioned a lot of this interest in BJJ started backstage at a Tool concert.
Yeah.
And now you've ended up being Maynard's trainer. Is that the correct term?
So he actually is part of my association. So Team Redline is an association. We have a handful of schools. We're very particular about the schools that we have. It's all either people that I know really, really well or grew up training with or whatever, or people that just have kind of made past the bar on trying to get there. And so Maynard is one of those people. He is the guy who got me started in jiu-jitsu, technically. So again, giving back to jiu-jitsu just makes sense to give back to him. He opened up a school in Cottonwood, Arizona on February 6th, which was my birthday. And so we had a grand opening out there. And it's a beautiful school called Verde Valley Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They've got Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu out there, and it's a world-class facility. It is kind of in the middle of nowhere, but that also makes it pretty cool. And I've been getting him prepared for his black belt. So he's a brown belt currently, and so we've been working pretty heavily. I went out there and stayed for 3 months, and before he went on tour with Puscifer, and he's got a guest house next to his house in Jerome. And so I stayed there, and then we worked every single day on his technique and the stuff that he wants to have prepared for before he becomes black belt. And so we've just been working on that. It's very difficult for him to have solid training because of his tour schedule.
Sure.
So he's traveling all over the place. So he's very smart. Obviously he's smart, but he, when he would travel and go train with people, he would have a very specific set of things he wanted them to show him. And so he would just work on that through the whole tour. And he would get different people's ideas about that. And so he's got a very cool, eclectic view of jiu-jitsu that you just can't get without doing what he did. So I think that's very cool. But unfortunately, it just made his road to black belt a lot longer. Right? Sure. He started, I think, in 93. So way before me at the Hicks and Gracie Academy on Pico. And that's where he met Henry Akins, was there. And so, he's an amazing guy. Obviously, he's got a bunch of cool projects that he does. His wine companies are great, Merkin Vineyards and Caduceus Wines. They're really, really cool. If anybody out there ever has a chance to go to Jerome and check out his stuff out there, it's pretty mind-blowing. And he's an amazing person, an amazing friend. I know I hear a lot of chatter about him, like he's always eccentric and he's weird and he's this and he's that and he's satanic or he's what, I hear all sorts of stuff. Sure. He's a normal dude. He's closer to like an Oklahoma farmer than what I would guess about anything else. That's basically what he is. He's one of the most, I've met a lot of rock stars, being just in the music business forever, and he's, sometimes you don't want to meet your idols type of thing.
I know that feeling.
But he's definitely who I would want him to be. He's one of the kindest, most giving people I've ever met. He takes care of literally everybody around him, his family's family. He takes care of a lot of people, so.
And how did you end up in this position to move him from brown or help move him from brown to black?
So my buddy Henry, who was his bodyguard when Tool was touring or when Tool tours.
Is this the dude that you mentioned in the beginning?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. We've been long-term friends, and Henry was the fastest person to black belt under this legendary Hicks and Gracie guy. And they had another guy that they had employed out there that was running the show, and then he left to go do other things. And he was getting ready to open up this big school, and so Henry, of course, is good friends with me, and I'd already met Maynard over the years a few times, so he knew about me, and I'd been out there to his place a couple years before. And so just asked me if I'd be interested to come out there and help them get the school up and running. We have a very specific business model that we do for our academies. And so he wanted to be able to, not lose money on an academy and have a structure and that kind of stuff. And I'm from the same kind of lineage that he's from. So from the Gracie Academy, And so it just made sense. And so I was able to, because of the structure at my school, I was able to leave it behind for 3 months, and it runs itself, basically. I say it runs itself. I've got a lot of amazing people there that run it, that if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't do that. But it's set up in a way to where it can run efficiently if I'm not there. So went out there to Maynard School. We got it opened up. I helped him teach his first seminar, which was open to the public, which was pretty wild. Because he's got great fans. Don't get me wrong. There's some fans out there that are great. They're just like me and you. They're like, man, I love your music. Thanks a lot, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then there's another group of people out there that are, a little obsessive. Mm-hmm. And then there's another smaller group, but still an important one, that are dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so you got to be real careful about that stuff. So in preparation for his seminar, we had to do a 7-hour course on like how to treat bullet wound injuries and stuff like that, and just active shooter stuff and just crazy stuff that everybody had to go through. And so luckily we didn't have too many issues. We had a few people that were on the list that had to be stopped from coming to the thing, but there's like literally a database of people that can't be close proximity. And so that was all taken care of. They got a great security detail out there, unbelievable security detail. I can't really say much more than that about it, but it's just really, really good. And so he did his first seminar. It was a huge success. It's called a triple stack, where you do 3 seminars in one day. Mm-hmm. And it basically opened up to anybody that wanted to show up. He was teaching just the very basic things that you would need just to start jiu-jitsu. Not like if you've experienced jiu-jitsu or you're already in jiu-jitsu, that you're going to get, I would say you wouldn't get a whole lot out of it. They still did, but basic fundamental movements, like how your body is supposed to move, how you're supposed to breathe, all these things, the body-mind connection. And for him to be doing that, I think people really enjoyed that. And it was a lot of people's very first experience with jiu-jitsu. So they can say they started their jiu-jitsu journey with Maynard. And I think that was pretty cool, which is what I did, too.
That's what I was about to say. If I would have known about this, I might have made it out there and be like, yeah, I've never done this before. I heard Maynard was doing one.
Yeah. Well, he's going to do some more.
That's fantastic.
I think. It's not advertised yet, but I think he's going to do some more, so I'll let you guys know. They sell out like the day they're announced, so I'll try to get you a ticket.
Yeah, no, it just sounds like one of those funny things like, yeah, I only ever took one BJJ class, and Maynard James Keenan from Tool taught it. Wait, what? Well, there's a story here. So I met this guy named Ty.
Yeah, right.
I love silly stuff like that. Was it easier for you to train students that you have some sort of personal background with, or is it easier to work with people who you don't know, and so you have simply that one-on-one relationship where you're training?
Yeah, so I've been teaching for a long time, and so I have a very refined way of teaching. So it doesn't really matter. It could be somebody I know or somebody I doesn't know. It doesn't matter. Everybody's treated the same. And really, I can't take credit for my teaching. I really learned this from Hinner and Hidon Gracie at the Gracie Academy. They're masters of what they do. The greatest thing I ever learned in my life was jiu-jitsu, but the second greatest thing I ever learned was how to transfer it to other people. And so, yeah, they have a very systematic way of doing that. It's a formula, really. And once you understand this formula, you can really teach anything. And so it's pretty amazing. And that's part of our association that we have. We teach teachers how to teach in the most efficient way. And so it makes the schools more streamlined and makes students learn the information faster.
Yeah. You mentioned that mind-body-spirit connection when it comes to jiu-jitsu and then Tool. And of course, one of the things they're known for is Alex Gray's work with them, the crazy psychedelic kind of stuff. I know that's becoming rather popular. I'm glad to see it. I personally have had some good experiences with it. Have you joined our train of we need more people to try psychedelics to figure themselves out?
Oh yeah, 1,000%. But it's just, just like jiu-jitsu, taking, say, mushrooms, for example, isn't going to fix the world. And there's some people that take it that have a horrible reaction to it. There's plenty of cases out there where somebody goes absolutely crazy on it. So, I endorse it to a degree, but you got to be careful. It's it's a psychedelic. It's changing your brain chemistry and stuff. But if it wasn't for mushrooms, I don't think that I'd be here. I don't think I'd be in jiu-jitsu. I was working at a pizza place, and I was in a band and doing stuff like that. But I mean, I was learning jiu-jitsu, but I wasn't teaching it. And I had a couple of offers to teach at this karate place, and I did that for a couple of times for like $20 a pop. And one day, went over to my friend's house, and they're all watching some show on TV, and they're all going to do mushrooms. And so they're boiling it, making mushroom shots, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it was a 10-gram shot of mushrooms. So, and I hadn't eaten. I go over there with my girlfriend. I'm sitting on the couch. We take these shots. And back then, it was like when the big screen TVs were like huge, the big backs on them and stuff. Like, the projection ones. So I'm sitting there on the couch, and I kind of feel cold or whatever, and my girlfriend's holding my hand. I look down at her hand, and I swear it looked like the devil's hand. Like, it looked creepy like that, right? And I was like, oh, shoot. And the next thing you know, the whole world, like, started zooming out and, like, just zeroing out. And so I could only see this little spot, and then zoop, it was gone. It was just black. And I was standing barefoot in black sand. I was like, oh, holy shit, what have I done? I broke my brain. And then I could start to see it getting closer to me. There was this fire-looking, shape-shifting devil thing, right, coming towards me. And it started whipping me with its tail. Wham! Every time it whipped me, I would see white, and it would like electrocute me. I mean, it was crazy, right? And so every time it hit me, bam, electrocute the shit out of me. And so I'm trying to dig into the sand and everything. It sounds insane, I know, but again, 10 grams. Don't do 10 grams, kids. So they call that a heroic dose, and I didn't feel very heroic. So, man, I'm trying to dig into the sand, get away from the shape-shifting devil beating me with his tail, and he kept hitting me, wham, and pretty soon I can feel my life force slipping away. Like, I'm going to die. I'm like, oh, shit, this is it. If I get hit one more time with this devil's tail, I'm going to die. So I'm ducking and bobbing and weaving. And sure enough, wham, and it like just fried the shit out of me. And then all of a sudden, the whole room opened back up. I was stone cold sober. My girlfriend was still holding my hand. Everybody's watching TV, and they were fine, and I was not. I stood up, I let her hand go, and I said, listen, me and you aren't working. This is over.
Yeah.
And I told the rest of the guys, hey, I'm stone cold sober. It's done. I told my guitar player that day that I wasn't Christian anymore. I used to be really religious. And I quit Christianity that day. And and I changed the trajectory of my life. I quit my pizza job, and I went into teaching jiu-jitsu full time.
Yeah. Wow.
So that I've literally changed my life. And I stopped drinking alcohol. I didn't do mushrooms again for 5 years after that, because I was scared as shit about it, Didn't smoke cigarettes or weed or anything. I just stone cold sober, water's all I drink, and I just trained.
Yeah.
And did music and stuff. So it literally changed the trajectory of my life, like a hard cut to the right, So yeah, even though it was scary and I thought I was going to die and all that kind of stuff, for me, it changed the trajectory of my life in a way that now I'm thankful for.
Absolutely. And I had a similar experience where I came in super cocky. I knew what I was doing. I've done this before. It is nothing. I learned some lessons, And so that's what I always say when people talk about bad trips. I'm like, okay, so I've had fun on psychedelics, but the bad trips were where I really learned things.
Sure.
Like, that's where the real work gets done. And you get in your mind, like you said, this isn't working. And I came out of it the exact same way. And people who knew me the day before were like, what happened to you? Did you get in a wreck or something? I'm like, well, kind of.
Yep.
There was a train wreck in here, and, I've got to extinguish the flame and get the thing back on track.
Yeah.
So since then, do you stay away from heroic doses, obviously, but is there, do you do a regimen, or is this just an occasional thing, microdosing?
I microdose quite a bit. I will also take journeys, too. I think that's still important, and it kind of recalibrates my brain. I don't do 10 grams, but yeah, I think it's very, I don't know, it's as spiritual as I get. It's more spiritual than any spiritual experience that I've ever had. You know what I'm saying? It's it's connected with something there. So I don't really have really good words to describe it, but I've also done DMT and some of those things before too. DMT, it's a little bit different of an animal. It's like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute.
Yeah.
So it's just super scary. And when we made the Everybody Panic record, before we created the record, we ended up doing DMT, and it really kind of shaped that record and stuff. And so it will augment you for sure, but it's not something that you have to be prepared for that. If you're not prepared to die, you shouldn't take DMT.
Right.
And so it's one of those things. And drugs are drugs. Anytime you're putting a chemical into your body, you're running a risk no matter what it is. So I don't know what those risks are, but you got to be careful. Just the same thing with anything. Like drinking alcohol is a risk.
Right.
I would probably say mushrooms is the safest psychedelic out there. DMT seems to be pretty safe, but man, scary as all hell. But I think for people that are really trying to explore themselves, and if they're kind of disenfranchised with what religion has given them, maybe give psychedelics a try.
Absolutely. And that's whenever you're talking about psychedelics, unless you've done them, you absolutely sound like a kook whenever you say these things. Like it's more spiritual. And I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but I only know because I've been there.
Sure.
And DMT is the one where I'm like, I'm still not ready for that one just yet. I've lost my fear of death, but I don't know, I'm still alive through that one. And it's in your brain. That's what your brain floods with when you die. So like you say, if you're ready to die, makes it sound like, it's a very dangerous drug. But no, it just more or less simulates death is what I hear. So when I hear people talking about this shit in a vape pen, I'm like, why would you want that?
Doesn't seem fun to me.
Are you crazy?
No, man.
So, but I'm glad because everyone who does DMT also comes out, oh, you got to try this. And you're the first one like, maybe you don't though.
Yeah.
Like you might want to choose your own adventure here.
For sure. And I know like Joe Rogan talks about it a lot, and there's a lot of push for it nowadays than before. But I remember when we were doing it, it was kind of underground and was like way more taboo. I'm glad that our culture is more accepting of these things today than they were previously. I think there's actually some studies going on here in Oklahoma on psilocybin and MDMA, which is really exciting. So I'm excited about that. I think, the pharmaceutical industry's got their hand in everything, and so they have stopped us from being able to have this tool for a long time. And I think that's cool that we've come around to the perspective that, maybe it's not like heroin.
Right.
Right. There's a fucking difference.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that's good. And I think for people that are that have addictions or who have, PTSD, there's some research out there now that looks really promising, more so than pharmaceutical drugs.
Absolutely. And I was very kind of not Exxon hands, but, straight edge when I was younger. And it was actually letting some of my guard down and getting more into intoxicants and then getting deeper and deeper. And it sounds like the beginning of every after-school special we ever watched growing up. But the reality is, if you augment your perception of reality, then you can come to understand reality in a better sense, which again, sounds like some hippy-dippy bullshit.
Sure.
But the reality is it's true. So your psychedelic experiences and moving onward, was there any interplay between, obviously, music, speaking of Tool, there's always that Bill Hicks line about people on drugs that's buried in
real fucking high.
Exactly. And they introduced me to Bill Hicks when I was younger. So there's that interplay with music. Is there an interplay between your forays into psychedelics and your martial arts discipline?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's all about the observer. So whoever is taking the psychedelics will have probably different experiences. But my personal experience is that we're all connected on a very deep, fundamental level. And not just humans, but like everything. All of it. And it's so massive and so overwhelming. There's no way we could actually understand it, but I feel that deep connection. Because of that deep connection, it allows me to be more connected in my jiu-jitsu practice with myself and with my students and with my environment, So, I think that's one of the, the connecting pieces between all that stuff. It allows me to just to feel more, I don't know, it's okay with I guess the now or who we are or just being or whatever. For a long time in my life, I was trying or striving to find the me, to try to be something or do something. There was something I was looking for. And then through psychedelic practice and then my own just meditative practice, I realized that thing I was looking for was me. Mm-hmm. And me is you and us and everything. And so seems hippy dippy, but
right.
But it's really the thing. It's like, and if you think about it, there's only really two things out there that we can really feel. Everything falls into these two categories. It's either fear or love. Mm-hmm. And so I try to make my life more love-based than fear-based. And that's probably because of my experiences I've had at this point.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's good life advice. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, it's very, much of our perception is so very binary that even if we wanted to think in a different way, it's just literally the tools that we're given to work with, to interact with this plane. So we've gone so far down this hole, but I noticed, and that's why I asked you. You know, weirdly enough, we had Provo on. I didn't ask him about psychedelics, and he's sitting here talking about cannabis companies. But there's always been, for me, I've noticed a correlation between martial artists and an interest in psychedelics. And so I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just, again, maybe you're just psychonauts. Yeah. You know, you just like delving deep within yourself and pressing yourself to your limits, and maybe that's the core. But there always seems to be some sort of affinity and attraction. And I know correlation and causation are two different things, but they seem to be matching. But kind of going back to the basics of Redline, you started the first one here, correct?
Yep.
And how quickly did that grow? And how many of them are here? And where in the world do you have them?
So our association is called Team Redline. So the other schools are not named Redline; they're just part of Team Redline. Mm-hmm. And so we have several schools here in Oklahoma. We have one in Oklahoma City, and then one in Edmond, Oklahoma. And then I have two in Canada. I have one in Philly, and then two in Arizona. One being Maynard's school.
And I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it yet, but it sounds like you've got a few in the works.
I do have some in the works, now, but it's not an open association.
Yeah.
So, and I know a lot of people have hit me up and want to become part of whatever. I will help people. I'll help anybody. So if you are having problems with your school, you want some help, I'm an open book. Feel free to contact me. Best to contact me on Instagram at TaiGayGJJ. Taigay Gracie Jiu Jitsu, that is. And so you can contact me there and I'll help you any way that I can. But as far as our association goes, we're really, really picky because, life is short. And I don't want to have it's not about quantity, it's about quality, and so we're very picky about those things. But we do have a few really cool ones in the works that are coming out. And we'll announce those here pretty soon in the future.
Cool. And someone who is wanting to get in this, what's kind of the initial investment to try beginner classes and things like that?
Well, at our academy, you get 10 days for free. So really absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. So same for your kids or for your family. Everybody can come and try it for free. And so it's the price for jiu-jitsu really is unpayable. If I gave you a secret weapon that if you were in a position that was life or death, how much would you pay for that secret weapon? Right? So I can't ask people to pay that. There's no amount of money. All we ask is for people to help us keep the lights on and keep the bills paid and that kind of stuff. And so I think that and most schools are the same way. We are a little bit more, I would say, pricey than some places, but there's a reason. Right. So we get people to accomplish their goals faster, and not just jiu-jitsu goals, but we have kind of a way it's set up to where it just helps you become a better version of yourself faster and accomplish your other goals too. And so that's, I think, the real difference between what we're doing and some of the other places are doing.
Absolutely. And again, open to, you say twice a week is kind of your normal jump in, but you're open you got 3 sessions a day?
Yeah, I mean, you can come as much as you want. In the beginning, we suggest doing 2 days a week and kind of getting your body used to it, because if you're not used to it, I mean, it's it will start to make you kind of sore. But after that soreness goes away, then you can do as much as you want. We have plenty of highly trained coaching staff that are there that will make sure that you're not overdoing it, you know? And that's important because people get in there and they get obsessed with it. It's definitely an obsession for some people. And so we kind of help you dial that back and keep you also accountable to make sure that you're coming to the right classes, coming when you're supposed to be coming, and that kind of stuff. And it's also a team of people. It's like I'm only as strong as I am by myself a little bit, but if I'm way stronger with all these other people behind me, you know? And so they are too. We're a family of jiu-jitsu practitioners. And so it's very similar to me as what church used to be. I used to be very heavily involved in the church. And so it feels kind of like that to me. So without, you know, the pulpit and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So.
No, it's a good way of putting it. You've built your own cathedral now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming in and talking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is a lot of
Appreciate
fun. Let's turn the camera off and get all the tool gossip now.